Welcome back to Newsmax TV's coverage of America Votes 2016, the Arizona primary and the Utah caucus. I'm J.D. Hayworth, and we've been having quite an invigorating discussion, and we're going to add some more folks to the discussion. As a matter of fact, we are going to get some different perspectives from around the coast. Now, you see below me here where numbers are going to start to come in about 20 minutes' time. The polls close at 7 o'clock Arizona time, 10 o'clock Eastern time, and we will have some numbers. As you see, the different contests in Arizona and in Utah, and we'll also try to update you on what's going on in Idaho in the Democrat caucus there. Now, as I promised, our discussion continues. Let's welcome in first the chief political correspondent for USA Radio Network's Scottie Nell Hughes. Also joining us from Newsmax New York, senior political contributor for Forbes.com, Rick Ungar. And from Washington, the senior contributor for The Federalist, D.C. McAllister. And likewise from Newsmax New York, Dennis Michael Lynch. DML, your chance to respond to D.C. McAllister.
D.C. started the conversation off by saying immigration. She started off by saying immigration is a single topic, and then all of a sudden it was, yeah, it does touch national security. You know what I think the difference is? You know, Ted Cruz, when he has the opportunity to have a camera spot, he goes down to the border and he hands out teddy bears and food and soccer balls to illegal aliens as they come over the border. You would never see Donald Trump do that sort of thing. What Donald Trump does is he meets with the parents and the family members who have lost loved ones to illegal aliens who come into this country unlawfully. And that's why that woman that we had on the last segment said that the group that's involved with that sort of thing is supporting Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to keep to his word. And I'll tell you why I know this, JD. Before I started getting into the immigration issue, before I started making my films, I didn't care about immigration at all, okay? I probably, given the chance, would have hired an illegal immigrant. But once you start getting involved, when you've got a mother sitting in front of you and start taking her album out and showing the pictures of her child all through their life, and then she starts crying uncontrollably and says, my child is dead because nobody protected the border, you suddenly change. So I don't want to hear about anything Donald Trump did earlier in his life. Right now is where we are. And I can tell by looking at Donald Trump in his eyes, he means it. He's going to shut down that border. He's going to keep the terrorists out of this country. And that's why he is drawing the crowds he is. I don't care what D.C. McAllister or anybody else says who wants Ted Cruz. He's not getting the nomination. We've got to get behind Trump because he's the only person who can beat Hillary.
In a more traditional year, it would appear that Ted Cruz comes in. He's obviously well-spoken, a man of great academic accomplishment as well as political accomplishment. And we have seen him very effectively on the Senate floor filibuster Obamacare and take a very assertive stance, though some would say opportunistic, about immigration and illegal immigration. D.C., how do you square? I got to confess, that was one thing that mystified me. Senator Cruz on the border with radio talk show host Glenn Beck handing out those stuffed animals to illegal juveniles being brought across the border. Then, during committee hearings, talking about amendments, saying he wanted a solution and sounding as if he welcomed the work being done by the Gang of Eight. Are we just to believe that was rhetorical flourish and the courtesy extended in the Senate?
Well, I think you also have to realize what he is actually done down at the border. I mean, he's the one who had the commercial about the father who lost the son, you know, to an illegal immigrant. I mean, so Ted Cruz has definitely been consistent as far as his support for closing the border. He's been consistent from day one. He opposed the Gang of Eight. That was his whole fighting with Marco Rubio. So I don't see where the inconsistency as far as Ted Cruz goes on this. And as far as the passion for wanting to close the border and the concern about this, I share that. And so do all the conservatives who support Ted Cruz. We just don't think that we need to put our faith in a single man, in Donald Trump, and say he's the only man that can do this. I mean, that's a little concerning to me, to say that he can do that when he has no record of doing this, no proof that he's done this, and he also is very wish-washy on his own views. So I don't know where all this faith in Donald Trump, just because you look in his eyes, you can see into his soul and know that he will actually do it. He's never governed anything. He's a deal maker. He has said he's a deal maker. And why can we trust him when he's changed his positions on so many different things? I just don't understand the faith in the man, when we should have faith in principles and faith in ideology and faith in governance and the statesmanship that we've had from Ted Cruz. He says, when he was at his rallies, he said, I don't want you holding up your hand and making a vow and loyalty to me and my campaign. I want to say that I'm going to make a vow to you, to the people, that I'm going to uphold the Constitution. That's where my loyalty lies. And personally, I want to put my faith in someone who puts their faith in the Constitution. I do not put my faith in a man.
Well,
We have had enough of that for the last 7 years of personality worship. Now,
we appreciate that, DC, but let me do something here, because we need to have a discussion, and I appreciate your passion. But let me bring in our two other panelists here to get their perspective. Scottie Nell Hughes in Nashville, Tennessee. Can the great man theory, if you will, coincide peacefully with constitutional government? Because the implication seems to be, and maybe not so much implication from some radio talk show hosts, that Trump is authoritarian and would move away from the Constitution.
Well, I don't think we have much of a choice right now, JD, considering where our country is right now and how open and porous our borders are. And if you want to see what happens, what the result could be, just look at what happened in Brussels today. Now, that's ultimate, that's extreme, but it's what is happening around our country. So we do need to get a hold of this program and this project. Now, I also have to question some of those that continue to use rhetoric and to use their passion to continue to divide conservatives. Are they really wanting to unify? I mean, a couple months ago, we really thought there would have been a good, winning, solid ticket between Trump and Cruz. And yet, somehow, this divide has happened between them and caused this civil war within the conservative movement. We are going to have to figure out a way to unify it, to heal it. And I respect the other two guests. I love their passion. I think it's phenomenal. However, if they both stick so stubbornly on their side, we might as well start moving Hillary Clinton into the White House. They have got to everybody has taken this election so personally, JD. It scares me, because I do not know if we're going to be able to heal it, whoever our top contender is once we come out of the convention. And when you look at the other side and the machine that Hillary Clinton has beat, you have to wonder, are people going to put their egos beside their policy? Which one is going to be their bigger priority? And for some, I'm worried it's not what's best for America.
Well, let's turn to Rick Ungar, who must look on with a mixture of delight and bemusement when Republicans and conservatives find fault with each other and with their respective candidates. What about the specter of Hillary? Does this clear the deck for Mrs. Clinton, Rick?
Does what clear the deck for her?
The strife, especially if something comes to fruition in terms of a third-party movement, if the establishment goes on its way, dissatisfied should Donald Trump get the nomination.
If there's a third-party movement coming out of the conservative side, then yes, it does clear the decks for Hillary Clinton. But you got to remember, there's all this focus on the Republican race for all the obvious reasons. It's not like things are a cakewalk in my party. You have a whole shift going on there, going much more to the Bernie Sanders side, where people who might identify more as centrist or center-left, people like me, really are finding that we probably won't be able to fit in too much longer. So you've got this whole thing happening. It's not going to be a cakewalk for Hillary, I don't think. I think she'll probably ultimately win, but it's not going to be easy. And let's face it, there are still some potential problems out there looming for her.
D.C. McAllister, Phyllis Schlafly has been quoted as saying, Trump for president, Ted Cruz for the Supreme Court. Your reaction to that notion of Mr. Cruz and his legal talents?
I mean, he definitely has extraordinary legal talents, but he's running for president. And I agree that we need unity in this party. And it doesn't help that Donald Trump is going around saying lying Ted. I agree also that we need to focus not on personalities and not on egos. We need to look at policy. We need to look at principles. And we need to look at what is the basis that we are choosing a president. What is his responsibility? What is his oath? It's to uphold and preserve the Constitution. It's not to make you have tingles up and down your legs and inspire you in your heart. It's about him who's going to uphold the Constitution. Who of the candidates before us is working on policy, who stands on policy and stands on principle according to the Constitution? Because that is his job. And I feel like conservatives, constitutional conservatives like me, we're in this vice grip where we have the establishment on one side and the populace on the other, and here we're getting squeezed out when we are saying stand on policy, stand on the Constitution, stand on principles, and we see that being lost in this election, and it's very concerning.
As one who used to chair the Constitutional Caucus in the House of Representatives, I think it's fair to say that one can be a constitutionalist and a populist as well. Let me turn back to Dennis Michael Lynch, who's been listening to the discussion here. DML, we talk about the Constitution, and yet when it comes to the mundane rules of the Republican Party, not exactly constitutional, there is a fear that technicality will be used. Already, the second delegate has come out to say, nah, it really doesn't. The decision on the nominee does not rest with the voters in our primaries and or the caucuses we hold. It rests with us as delegates at the party convention. Your take on that sentiment among some within the Republican Party?
If Donald Trump goes into that convention and he doesn't have the 1237, but he has the bigger number, and he doesn't get the nomination, this country is going to be lit on fire. Fire. And as far as the rhetoric that I'm listening to, shaking my head here off camera, about how we have to unite. Well, if Ted Cruz really cared, he'd take a look at the scorecard and say, you know what, I need a modern day miracle, an almost impossibility. I need to get more than 80% of the delegates going forward. And it's just not going to happen. So if he was really that concerned and he really wanted to make amends with Donald Trump, he should turn around now and say, you know what, it is clear. The American people have spoke. They have voted. They're coming out in record numbers for Donald. And you know what? I'm going to get behind Donald as well. And maybe Donald will put me in his cabinet. Maybe Donald will find a place for me and my talents, and I can help win this election against Hillary Clinton. But he's not doing that. So when we're talking about egos, what's driving that? And as far as Donald Trump ego goes, you're all missing it. Okay, I understand that Donald Trump has a huge ego. He understands he has a huge ego. But here's what you're missing. This man has been traveling the country now, running for president. He's seeing things and problems that he's never seen before. He's seeing them in a different light. And you know what? His DNA, he's programmed to win. He is programmed to fix problems. And if he wants to have his face on Mount Rushmore, because that's what his ego wants, he's smart enough to know that the only way to get there is to fix these problems. So I'm willing to allow that ego to work for me, my country, and my children. Let him get his face on Mount Rushmore. Because if he's going to get his face on there, I know that a couple things happened. And it all equates to this country going back to the great country it once was before Barack Hussein Obama fundamentally transformed it.
A minute 30 remains. Scottie, Nell, I know you want to get in on it. To the charge of ego, as one who has worked in television and one who has served in political office, truth be told, everybody involved in these two pursuits has a healthy ego. The point you wanted to make, Scottie, now.
Well, I listen to Dennis Michael Lynch and I respect everything he's saying, but I think that right there shows the diversity of the person who's supporting Mr. Trump. As I also, as we know, kind of fall into that category, but I approach it from more of an even kill, calm personality. Now, I understand we need strength. I understand there's time to fight, but we're amongst friends right now, Dennis, and that kind of conversation, that kind of language is not going to help heal them. This is not going to help bring them. We are going to need those numbers. And when you sit there and we sit there and Mr. Trump can sit there and use that kind of language, and that's what he does as president and running for president. The rest of us, though, we need to be using more kind of conversation. We need to sit here and be trying to be and bring people in to the campaign and not continue to exclude them. I think that's where we've gotten to the problems that we are today.
Well, let's take a look at where we are tonight. It's about, 7 minutes away from the results coming in from Arizona. And if I might make this observation, perhaps it is part and parcel of where we are in this process. Nerves get frayed, passions inflame, much as at stake for several candidates tonight as the process continues for now. Our thanks to D.C. McAllister checking in from Washington, D.C., Scottie Nell Hughes from Nashville, Tennessee, and of course, my colleague Dennis Michael Lynch from Newsmax, New York. Obviously, there is much more ahead on this Tuesday night in March as America Votes 2016 continues here on Newsmax TV. Stay with me.